One of the things I see a lot of people posting about on Facebook during this time of COVID-19 is cleaning their house and their yard. I look out my window on a nice sunny day and see folks mowing, weeding, mulching, transplanting their flowers. I also hear of friends who are doing deep cleans of their homes, some doing a lot of disinfecting. And that's to say nothing of all the hand washing that's happening these days. We are truly focused on being clean right now. We want to kill any virus or bacteria that comes our way, and we go to great and sometimes extreme lengths to make things safe for our homes. This week we're going to look at some of the ways that the week before Jesus' crucifixion parallels the preparations Israel would make prior to commemorating the Passover. In Exodus 12, 3-6 and 14-15, God gives some instructions on how Israel is to commemorate his rescuing the people from slavery in Egypt. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their fathers' houses, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons, according to what each can eat, and shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. This day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. As a statute forever you shall keep it as a feast. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven out of your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. Now, one of the first things Jesus did after his triumphal entry into Jerusalem was to visit the temple. Historically, theologians say that Jesus cleansed the temple of the wickedness that was happening in the house of God. And we read that story in Mark 11:15-18. And they came to Jerusalem, and he entered the temple, and began to drive out those who sold and those who bought in the temple. And he overturned the table of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he would not allow anyone to carry anything through the temple. And he was teaching them and saying to them, Is it not written, My house shall be called a house of prayer for all the nations, but you have made it into a den of robbers. And the chief priests and the scribes heard it, and were seeking a way to destroy him, for they feared him, because all the crowd was astonished at his teaching. In Jesus' time, King Herod had expanded the Temple Mount, adding a court of the Gentiles to the outside of the temple. In this courtyard, both Jews and Gentiles could gather around the temple proper, and could ask questions about God to rabbis who would gather there. During Jewish celebration times, the money changers would set up their tables in the court of the Gentiles, so that those who had traveled to Jerusalem for a feast could change their local currency for temple currency and purchase the items they needed for the sacrifices and for the feast. The trouble was, many of the money changers and merchants would cheat people by giving them less than their money was worth, and then by selling sacrificial animals for exorbitant prices. When the Bible says Jesus entered the temple, what he's entering is the actual temple, not the court of the Gentiles. The money changers had become so numerous that some of them had started encroaching on God's house. And not only that, but they were bringing their dishonest trade practices into the house of prayer. And Jesus put a stop to it. He flipped over tables. He drove out those who were selling pigeons. But Pastor Joe, why just the pigeons? Well, I'm glad you've asked. When God gave instructions about making sacrifices, he almost always named lambs, rams, or goats as the appropriate sacrifice, except if you were poor. God wanted the poor to be able to worship him too, and in the instruction for sacrifices, he would say that if a person was poor, they were to take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever he could afford, to make their sacrifice. When the merchants at the temple were selling their pigeons for over market price, they were quite simply price gouging the poor. Jesus cleansed the temple of those who would make money taking advantage of the poor. They would expand their own pockets, just like leaven expands bread. In a symbolic way, Jesus was removing the leaven by removing these thieves of the poor from the house of prayer. He was cleansing the house of God in preparation for the coming sacrifice of the Passover lamb. Tomorrow, we'll look at the last part of Mark 11 and learn about the selection of the Passover lamb. God bless you.